Local and state educators remain concerned about I-STEP testing. We'll have more on that. Plus, the next 2-year state budget is now in the works, and District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer is tonight's guest for Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. We begin with the ongoing concerns as I-STEP testing is now underway for many students across the state. Schools statewide are reporting students who are concerned about being held back in their current grade if they don't fare well on I-STEP this year due to the difficulty of it. Many educators are pointing to many students' memories from the I-Read test that is done in 3rd grade. In that case, students are held back if they don't fare well. Of course, the difficulty of the exam is not the only controversy with I-STEP this year. The test was shortened to just under 9 hours just a few days before its originally scheduled start. The test had been 12 hours in length prior to that, twice as long as last school year's test. State officials say the longer test was largely due to the addition of pilot questions that are being used to create a test for next school year that would replace the I-STEP exam. Locally, Greater Jasper Superintendent Dr. Tracy Lori has been among those with concerns about I-STEP. Last month, Lori said standardized tests should not be such a burden to schools.
I-STEP is a very high-stakes test. There's a lot of pressure for students to perform by the students themselves, for the teachers, for the school, and for the district. And so assessment for the purposes of trying to gauge what's important in instruction for the student is great, but high-stakes tests with a lot of high-stakes decisions are troubling.
Lori told the Greater Jasper School Board last month that changes in the test will likely delay the release of test scores for this year. She also has expressed concerns about some students taking the English Language Arts portion of the test while others take the math portion. Lori says that makes it nearly impossible for school and teacher ratings to be accurate since not everyone takes the same test. Jasper residents who are interested in the future of the Parklands property are invited to a public hearing on the issue next week. The Jasper Park and Recreation Board will be hosting the meeting next Tuesday, March 10th. That meeting takes place at 6 p.m. at Clubhouse 61. During this meeting, consultants will be presenting an overall framework and direction for the property going forward. City officials say no formal design plans will be presented, though they say the framework is likely to include additional walking paths and plans for more access points among other items. Now, the City of Jasper has owned the Parklands property since April of 2013. The city bought nearly 60 acres of the land for just under $1.1 million at that time. Prior to the purchase, the property had been vacant following the December 2012 closure of the former Jasper Country Club. The land has been used as a managed meadows since being opened to the public last summer. The Parks Department kept the property closed for several months while crews worked to get the land ready for public use. Indiana lawmakers are continuing their work on the next state budget, and local legislators are happy with what has been accomplished thus far. The new 2-year budget passed out of the House last Tuesday by a vote of 69 to 29, and the budget was referred to the Senate Appropriations Committee this past Monday. District 63 Representative Mike Braun is on the House Ways and Means Committee. Braun says he's pleased with the House version of the budget, which has the largest increase in education spending in state history. He says it will now be a matter of working with the Senate to get the budget to where it needs to be.
For education, K through 12, it was the largest increase, I think, historically that the budget has ever seen, and that's the House version. They generally are a little more conservative than what the House would be. That's the process of getting it worked out between the House and Senate versions. We will be looking at their version because they had a bill that came out of that committee starting probably next week.
Braun says work still needs to be done on funding for roads. He says the biggest hurdle there is finding a funding formula that will work over the long haul as gas tax revenues continue to drop. Meanwhile, District 48 State Senator Mark Messmer agrees that the new budget is a positive step.
In the big picture things, absolutely. We've got another $400 million into road funding, which is huge, above and beyond what's coming out of our fuel excise taxes. So those are the two big components that I think we're making the right strides. We'll continue to tweak them. And then obviously when the new budget forecast comes out in April 15th, we'll make our final adjustments. But so far I like what I see.
Senate Appropriations Chairman Luke Kinley is also praising the House version of the budget. However, he says things will likely be dialed back a little bit as the Senate begins to work on its version. Kinley says this will be the most difficult state budget to write in the last 10 years because there is now more money to work with. And finally tonight, this weekend marks the change back to daylight savings time all across our viewing area. Clocks should be moved forward an hour before bed tomorrow night. The time change officially takes place in the early morning hours on Sunday. Now, advocates of moving the entire state to the Central Time Zone are working to get the debate restarted in the Indiana General Assembly. Members of the Central Time Coalition took their case to the State House yesterday. The group maintains that in areas of the state on Eastern Time, it's often too dark outside as kids head off to school in the morning. State lawmakers have not been willing to consider clock issues since daylight savings time was adopted in Indiana back in 2005. In our area, Spencer, Perry, and Warwick counties operate on Central Time. The rest of our counties are on Eastern Time. All right, coming up after the break, the warm-up continues in your local forecast, and later on, more on what's going on at the Indiana State House in this week's legislative update. We're back after this.